Hello and welcome. Today we'll be making chili powder from dried chilies. While making the taco meat video, I realized I need to have a how-to video for the chili powder so I don't have to show it every time I use it. And instead I can just point to the video on just that and link that in the comments for reference. I'll probably do this for a lot of other ingredients that get repeated a lot. So, as always, before we get started, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, subscribe for more reference videos like this, as well as full recipes. So, for our ingredients, we only need dried chili peppers. This 2.5 ounce bag of dried California chili peppers will make about one normal size spice container of chili powder. The first thing we want to do is check to see if they are flexible or break when we attempt to fold them in half. With any dried peppers, if they remain flexible, they still have too much moisture in them to be blended into a powder. If they remain flexible like mine here, we can dry them in an oven set to the lowest temperature, or warm if your oven has that. Spread them out on a sheet pan so none are on top of each other, and this is going to take about 2 hours to completely dry them out. If your oven has a warm setting, you'll want to open the door for a few seconds every 15 minutes or so to let the moisture out. For those without warm setting, leave the door cracked. When the chilies easily break when flexed, they are dry enough to use. Once they come out of the oven, we just need to let them cool for 15 to 30 minutes and decide how spicy we want it. Once cooled, you'll want to grab it at the top and pinch off the stem from the now dried peppers. We don't want the stems because they are bitter and do not add anything good to the flavor of the chili powder. Once it's been pinched off, you can pour out the seeds. There's also typically seeds in the bottom half of the chili peppers that you will need to break the pepper in half to pour out. Since we know that they are dry, if we just break it apart the chilies without being careful, they'll fall apart and you'll end up having to pick up a bunch of chili pieces from amongst the seeds. And that's no fun. So when you're cracking it, just be a little bit careful and gentle. Now, the only other thing you need to check is inside the chilies where the stem was connected. It will sometimes leave a seed pod inside after the stem has been pulled off, since it is dry enough for the stem to break away without taking the pod with it. So, as you can see here from the one I broke below where the seed pod is, there is a small seed pod directly underneath the stem. This small seed pod will tend to break off while you're getting rid of the stem and generally falls out when you pour out the seeds, but sometimes it does not actually fall out. What I've been doing to tell if the seed pod actually remains inside, which is why you haven't seen me checking this, is I'm pinching the dried pod a little bit just below this where I broke off the stem. If the seed pod's still inside, that will either likely break it or at the very least let you know it's there. Once all of the pods and stems are removed, we are ready to go to the blender. So we just drop our chilies in and start blending. This is where we determine our chili powder's heat level. Most of the capsaicin is contained in the seed. The outer pepper has some, but it's mostly a fruity flavor rather than hot. So you'll want to add some of the seeds to this. I usually go with about 1/4 teaspoon, and that's what I did here as well. I start with small pulses with a shake of the blender in between them. I do this about 3 to 5 times until the pepper pieces are all broken up to the point where we no longer need to tap the blender to get them to go down. At this point, it's just a series of much longer pulses to get your desired consistency. I prefer mine with some bigger pieces as I find that makes the no heat part of the pepper's flavors stand out more in the dishes that I use them in. With some recipes though, you will want just a powder because it would change the dish visually, and for that, you would want to keep blending until it's all superfine powder. Now, if you look at this, you can see the small bits of seeds throughout the mixture. This is going to be typical in any homemade chili powders. Unless you remove all of the seeds from the mixture, the seeds will not break down fully before the chilies are themselves ground to a superfine powder. So while you're adding heat, you're also adding the partially broken seeds visually, and for some dishes that might not be okay for you. For home cooking though, this should be perfectly fine on all circumstances. You can also see the larger pieces that I leave in mine. So now that it's blended to our preferred size, we can start getting it into a bottle. We will want to also get all of this powder here off the lid. There's going to be a lot of powder stuck there, so I recommend just grabbing a piece of parchment paper or a paper plate as I'm using here. You just flip the lid on it and tap that powder out. Once that's done and you realize that a funnel is not going to work because there's some big pieces, we can take a big piece of parchment or wax paper and make a quickie funnel out of it to get everything into the bottle. Well, everything except for the dust I got all over the tablecloth. Once you do have all of yours in a container, you are good to go with your homemade chili powder. Oh yeah, real quick, I wanted to show you guys this picture because the way the tablecloth reflected into the bottle was actually pretty neat. I used California chilies here, but you could use this exact same method with any other dried chilies. The process is going to be the same for every one you do. So if you want, you can have more than one type on hand, which is what I tend to do. I usually have 2 or 3 different kinds on hand. And with that, our first reference video is complete. So if you have not subscribed and would like to see more like this, please do. And everyone have a great day and a great meal.